Well, hello. I'm going to go into another story. The last one that I told of Wilhelmina was one that I had received word of mouth through family. This one goes back further. There were no people that I've known that, in fact, would know these people firsthand. Uh, Genealogy has been, in my lifetime, uh, popular within the culture a couple of different times. So there's been ebbs and flows where people were very interested in genealogy and times where they weren't. And I guess I've been a fair weather fan in as much as my interest was high at the times that people were involved in it. And then a lot of this stuff went on the back shelf when it fell out of favor. I have two sisters, and I had a distant cousin that were much more diligent than I in doing genealogy. And fortunately, they shared things with me when I was involved and interested in it. And so a lot of the information that I got came from the work of others. But I wasn't without investment. I remember back in the time when you would go to the library and order the census microfiche, and then when they came in, you'd go use the microfiche reader and go through that until your eyes were blurred and looking for things in censuses on your family. And I did a sufficient amount of that for sure. Also, I had business in Salt Lake at one point and spent a day at the Mormon archives there going through their microfiche. Another time I was in Washington, D.C. doing things and decided to go over and spend a day in Baltimore in the historical archives there. Found a number of things on the family. Made trips and vacations that we would do around some of the genealogical things. One point, we were going down to the Shiloh battlefield, in which I had relatives that fought in it, and my daughter, who was in middle school, wanted to have her best friend come along with us on vacation. And we said, okay, she did. And as we went along, going through cemeteries and battlefields, and the weather wasn't all that great either. The girlfriend, whose family had a timeshare in the Mexican Riviera, so when she heard vacation, she was thinking ocean, sand, sun, good time, and turned out dragging through battlefields. She asked my daughter, "Are all your vacations like this?" So there was investments of time to come up with various information, and so that is the basis of this story that I'm going to tell now. At one point, I would go over to libraries at lunchtime as a break from work, and I think it was the LaGrange Park Library that I ran across a book which was Manifests of Passengers from England to Chesapeake Bay area, Virginia, and found the family name in 1653 on a ship. So I always, on that little shred of evidence, make the claim that the family came in 1650s to the Chesapeake Bay area of Virginia. And I know there's a modern idea that the United States began in 1619, but I'm pretty sure that at this point we were under the rule of the monarch in England, and it was a monarchy, and the king was the law. So 1653, a pretty early date for sure coming into the country. I'm going to pick up with ancestor named Jacob, and Jacob was born in 1772. That's 4 years before the American Revolution. There's a picture there of a building that was built in 1772. So the buildings have a ability sometimes to far outlast the people. So Jake was born under the jurisdiction in the Virginia area of the monarch in England. He was not born a citizen of the United States. Jake's father was a fifer in the Revolution. There's a family sketch that was done by a grandson much later in history that some of this information came from, that both the Jake's mother and father, mother's father and father's father were in the Revolution. So, and that there was a vein of martial music that ran through the blood, because advanced forward to the Civil War, there were family members who were also musicians in that conflict. So finding information in Baltimore, it turns out that I think it was the 1840 or 1850 census that I had first found way back, and found Jacob. And at that census, one of the questions were occupation, and it said sailmaker. And I thought Jake must have been trolling the census takers. What in the world would someone in the middle of Indiana need a sailmaker for? But as it turns out, in fact, that's what he did do in his early career in Baltimore, right on the harbor. I think some of those buildings still stand as a museum area, and at that time, of course, all the ships were sail. This was before steam of any kind, so I guess a sailmaker was a real good, steady occupation. So Jake worked in Baltimore around the turn of that 19th century as a sailmaker. At that time, in 1814, General Ross brought an invading force to the U.S. Really, a lot of the folks from this time and even later times considered the War of 1812 actually to be a continuation of the American Revolution. We call it the War of 1812 now, but they considered it to be the continuation, since the British had moved out and not continued after the colonies only because they had European wars to wage. So now, when they had settled Napoleon in the European wars, they had turned their interest back on their colonies, as they saw it, and in fact sent an invasion force. And General Ross sacked D.C. and burnt the White House, and President Madison and his wife Dolly and everyone spread running away from British, who were going to, in fact, bring the strong arm of the monarch back down upon the people. He next then turned his interest up the Chesapeake Bay to Baltimore. So he decided to take the city of Baltimore, which at that time was a trade industrial center for the colonies. And as he sailed up the Chesapeake to invade Baltimore, he laughed and made light of how this mob of butchers and tailors, the militia, had any idea that they would be able to stand against his European war hardened British troops. And I guess if you were an odds maker in Las Vegas at that time, you would have probably given the Bears a better chance in winning the Super Bowl than you would have given the butchers and tailors to stand against General Ross and his army that had just sacked the capital. In the Baltimore harbor, there's a fort, and I kind of personalize this because in my genealogy, the McHenry name is existent. Robert McHenry came from Baltimore to the Indiana area and married with family members, so I am genealogically part of McHenry. I don't know if he had any connection with the person that the fort was named after or not. Could be, maybe not. But I always, found it humorous. My grandfather would always say that when behaviors weren't what they should be, is you've got those McHenry instincts. So evidently, in family lore, the McHenrys were considered kind of a wild, wild set of people. So when I hear of Fort McHenry and the family connection of it, it's personal. Aboard ship, a guy named Francis Scott Keyes was being detained, as a matter of fact, and observed the fort being assaulted by General Ross and his ships, and they bombarded in preparation for their invasion. And he was so astonished in the morning that, in fact, the fort had held out, undermanned and undergunned, but still stiff-necked in their resistance of the Brits. And he penned a poem that probably everyone is familiar with, but "Oh say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare and the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?" It's more than just a national anthem or a song, or it's personal to me, to stand for our independence and the folks who were real at this time and put it all on the line so that we could have what we have today. The flag over Fort McHenry is an emblem of freedom, an emblem of the ideas of 1776, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These aren't just words. These are ideals, and these are ideals that many, many have fought and died to give us as a gift. Well, butchers, tailors, and evidently sailmakers went down to meet General Ross. And in the later written biography, it indicates that Jake, two young Britishers, it says, I don't know if the word Britishers is a word, but two young Britishers shot Jake while marching to meet General Ross. So Jake took a bullet. He had a 2-year-old son at the time, and he was a militia that had a job and a family and a lot of things, and he decided to put his life on the line to defend the country that he had his parents had won for him. And he carried a wound through his entire life from that encounter. Well, what would you know? General Ross, he got shot dead by one of those butchers or tailors or sailmakers, and his army retreated in disarray, never to return. And Baltimore was saved. Now, you might say that I've heard it said in this modern philosophy that the revolution was fought to continue slavery. Jake happened to be a abolitionist, a very vehement abolitionist. He didn't go down to defend the country against a European hardened army that he had no chance against because of something like that. He went down because he had a 2-year-old son, and he was going to defend his his country and his way of life and his principles. And he gave as a gift to that son and to his grandchildren and his great grandchildren, who are alive today, the continuation of freedom. And to him, I am thankful for his service. He died in 1861, so he had a very good long life. He was a citizen soldier. The picture and this background rubbing come from his headstone that are in the Marble Creek Cemetery, which got moved to near Madison, Indiana, when the government took the land over through eminent domain. And to my knowledge, I haven't been down there in a while, his stone is still there on his grave. So this story was the story of a citizen soldier. If I get around to it, I'll continue on, because Jake became a pioneer to go west and settle some of Indiana territory. So hope you enjoyed that story. It's a true story, and maybe would give some insight as to why there are people in the country who are sensitive to our flag and our anthem and what it means to them. It's not just a piece of cloth or some words on a page. It's people who gave the ultimate to provide for us the freedoms that so far we've been able to enjoy. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this. If so, do a like and a subscribe and all those kinds of things. Thank you.